Hey everyone, welcome back to my Anthropology Journal podcast. This week tied together two powerful ideas: how we define human origins and how we define human ability. We looked at theories of how people first arrived in the Americas, the Kennewick Man controversy, and how science itself can shape stories about race, identity, and even athletic potential. This week we talked about the Ancient One, a 9,000-year-old skeleton discovered in Washington in 1996. Scientists said his skull looked Caucasoid, but local indigenous tribes insisted he was one of their ancestors. They fought for 20 years for his reburial, and in 2015, DNA testing finally confirmed the connection. We also reviewed the Clovis first migration theory, the old idea that humans entered the Americas through a single route over the Bering Land Bridge. New discoveries in Chile, British Columbia, and Texas now show that humans were here thousands of years earlier and likely arrived by sea. Both cases show how science can reflect the biases of the people doing it, who gets to decide what counts as evidence and who gets to define belonging. What really hit me this week is how much those scientific debates were also moral ones. When scientists said Kennewick Man didn't look native, they were really saying native people couldn't be the oldest inhabitants here. It was a quiet echo of the same logic used in the 1800s when anthropologists collected indigenous skulls to prove hierarchy between races. Those ideas didn't vanish, they just evolved. Instead of measuring skulls, we now measure genomes. Instead of ranking skull size, we rank genetic ancestry percentages. And the same question remains: who owns the story of the body? The Ancient One case showed that indigenous knowledge systems, oral histories, ceremony, kinship, hold truths just as real as scientific data. Yet science demanded DNA proof, as if stories passed down for millennia weren't top evidence enough. Anthropologist Kim Tallbear calls this genomic colonialism. It's when Western institutions claim biological ownership over indigenous identity. It's subtle but powerful. It shifts who has authority to say who you are. That power dynamic also connects to athletic ability and race. Sports have always been a stage where biology gets politicized. Reporters once said indigenous runner Tom Longboat lost races because of his Indian laziness, ignoring that he was training without the resources white athletes had. Today, when black athletes dominate sprinting or basketball, commentators still describe it as natural talent. When white athletes succeed, they're strategic or hardworking. That language isn't neutral. It's the modern version of craniometry. It assigns physical ability to genetics and intelligence to whiteness. Even international sports regulations reflect this bias. The testosterone testing policies for women athletes like Caster Semenya basically tell us whose body counts as female. It's the same old logic: measuring difference, defining normality, and deciding who fits. But I want to go beyond what we covered in class and look at where this mindset shows up now in AI and sports analytics. Today, algorithms track everything from muscle activation to recovery times. But the data used to train these models mostly comes from Western, able-bodied athletes. That means the ideal performance body is already biased. In medicine, the same happens. Eye diagnostic tools trained mostly on white patient data misread skin tones, underdiagnose heart disease in women, and even miscalculate kidney function for black patients. It's not skull measurement anymore. It's data measurement. The problem isn't technology, it's what history we build into it. If our data sets come from systems shaped by racism, our machines just automate that bias faster. This connects directly to anthropology's core question: how do we define normal humans? Whether it's through bone measurements, DNA scans, or biometric sensors, The danger is the same, mistaking pattern for truth. What I take from this week is that anthropology isn't only about the past, it's a warning about the present. Every time we use science to define who belongs, who's first, or who's naturally gifted, we risk repeating the same logic that justified grave robbing, exclusion, and inequality. But anthropology also shows a way out: collaboration. When indigenous archaeologists, geneticists, and athletes tell their own stories, science becomes accountable to humanity again. The Ancient Ones' reburial was more than a legal victory, it was a symbolic one. It proved that evidence and respect can coexist. So, whether it's in the lab, on the track, or in the data cloud, maybe the real challenge isn't finding origins or measuring ability, it's learning how to listen. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, the body doesn't tell one story, it tells as many as we're willing to hear.